Hello and welcome. This is a Fantastical Tales mini-sode. Basically, I've decided that for longer stories, if I want to talk about the source material or background or the folklore that's in the story, that I should create a separate mini episode. And for the shorter episodes, I should put the story at the front. That way, people that don't want to listen to me just ramble on don't have to. You can just listen to the story that way more easily. So this is a follow-up to episode 3, Dracula's Guest. And there are a number of things we could talk about with Dracula's Guest. As far as folklore goes, we could talk about wolves, silver bullets, burials at crossroads, the undead. But what I want to talk about, because it's going to happen in just a few days, is Walpurgis Night, or Walpurgis Night. So Walpurgis Night is April 30th, and it is the eve of the feast of Saint Walpurga. She was an 8th century Saxon saint. She was born in England. She was the niece of Saint Boniface, and she traveled with her uncle to continental Europe on his mission to convert the Germanic peoples. She had a feast day on May 1st. On the modern Roman calendar, May 1st is now the feast of St. Joseph the Worker. But this doesn't kick her off of the calendar because she actually had 2 feast days. February 25th being her death day, and the day on which a saint dies is usually their feast day because it's the day in which they are born into everlasting life. Bram Stoker's Dracula begins with Jonathan Harker leaving Munich on May 1st. And so it's thought that Dracula's Guest was intended to be the first chapter of Dracula because it takes place the day before on St. Walpurgis Eve. So I don't know, but I'm supposing that it was a very early sort of beginning of what later became Dracula. The experts on Bram Stoker and Dracula and all that debate whether it really was ever really part of the novel. It's a good story. I enjoyed narrating it. I enjoyed creating a soundscape around it. I did fumble here and there. And I probably mispronounced Walpurgis Nacht. Walpurgis Nacht? Yeah, I don't know. I don't speak German. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that story. And if you haven't listened to it yet, you should go back and listen to it. I would obviously like you to go back and listen to it, being the author of this podcast. Now, the armchair folklorist should recognize right away that May 1st is May Day, and there's, of course, all of the pagan fertility cult implications and lore that go along with that. It's also the Celtic feast of Beltane. Now, another name for Walpurgis Night is Hexennacht. And in English, we know what a hex is, right? It's a curse. So Hexennacht means witch's night. And I think a good way to think of this is as a counterpoint to Halloween. And in fact, it is exactly 6 months opposite of Halloween. And similar practices to those done on Halloween to keep the evil spirits at bay, so on Walpurgis Nacht, they would light bonfires to ward off the witches. Walpurgis Night is still celebrated in Germanic countries with bonfires and dancing and dressing up in scary costumes. Why ward off witches on this night? What's the deal here? It was believed that the eve of May Day was a major witches' Sabbat. There is a quotation from Jacob Grimm of Grimm Brothers fame, which I frustratingly haven't been able to track down the original source of, but it goes, it is given that witches hold their dance on Walpurgis Night. So the witches' Sabbat or Sabbath was a gathering of witches to meet with the devil or devils and do all sorts of grotesque things. So I am now going to read a partial description of a witch's Sabbat from a 17th century witch hunting manual. Now I'm going to omit a lot of things because this is a family-friendly podcast, and also some of it's just disgusting. And also there's a lot of just references to specific trials which took place in the 1600s and the 1500s, and a number of tangents as well, references to classical authors and other things. So this is a very trimmed down sort of overview of the Witches' Sabbat from the Compendium Maleficarum, Book 1, Chapter 12, by Francesco Guzau. Of course, it's written in Latin, but there is an English translation available, and if you want to go look it up and find it and read the whole description, you can. So he says, the devil can and does place a false body in the bed to deceive the husband, while a witch has gone to the Sabbat. And in order that the husband may not suspect she is absent, he either causes him to fall into a heavy sleep or substitutes a likeness of his wife, so that the husband, on awakening, may think that it is indeed his wife. Further, I hold it to be very true that sometimes witches are really transported from one place by the devil, who in the shape of a goat or some other fantastic animal both carries them bodily to the Sabbat, and himself is present at its obscenities. This is the general opinion of the jurisconsults of Italy, Spain, and Germany, while a great many others are of a like opinion. But it must be known that before they go to the Sabbat, they anoint themselves upon some part of their bodies with an unguent made from various foul and filthy ingredients, and so anointed they are carried away on a cowl staff, or a broom, or a reed, a cleft stick, or a distaff, or even a shovel, which things they ride. At times they are mounted upon an ox, or a goat, or a dog, and so carried to their feast. When these members of the devil have met together, they generally light a foul and horrid fire. The devil is president of the assembly and sits on a throne in some terrible shape, as of a goat or a dog, and they approach him to adore him. Then they offer him pitch-black candles and kiss him upon the buttocks in a sign of homage. Having committed these and other similar crimes and abominations, they proceed to infamy, as we shall tell later. The witches themselves assert that a great number of both sexes meet at their nocturnal Sabbats, but that there are far more women than men. There are tables placed and drawn up, and they sit and start to eat of the food which the demon has provided. But all who have sat down to such tables confess that the feasts are all foul, either in appearance or in smell, and that they would easily nauseate the most ravenously hungry stomach. Their wine also is black, like stale blood, and is given to the feasters in some filthy sort of drinking horn. They say that there is plenty of everything except for bread and salt. Most of the partakers of such feasts say that the food and drink satisfy neither their hunger nor their thirst, but that they are just as hungry and thirsty afterward as they were before. The eyes of those who attend such assemblies are not sure and clear of sight, but all is confused and disturbed, and appears vague to them, like those who are blinded by drunkenness or some sin or some magic. Thus witches sometimes are actually present at the Sabbat, and often again they are fast asleep at home, and yet think they are at the Sabbat, for the devil confuses them. Then follow dances, which are performed in a circle, but always going to the left. And while our dances are for pleasure, their dances bring them labor and fatigue and the greatest toil, and they return home from them so weary, according to their confession, that nearly all witches who have attended them say that they have to lie in bed about a full 2 days. And the most sorry and iniquitous thing about them is that no one is allowed to excuse herself, but go round and round to exhaustion. When they approach the demons to venerate them, they turn onto their backs and crawl backwards like crabs or spiders. When they speak, they turn their faces downward to the ground, and they do all things in a manner altogether foreign to the use of other men. Sometimes they dance before eating, and sometimes after. Some 3 or 4 tables are set apart for the richest and most honored among them. Sometimes each sits next to his own familiar spirit. Sometimes the witches on one side and the demons opposite them. There's not lacking a mock grace at a table worthy of such assembly, composed of blasphemous words in which Beelzebub himself is acclaimed the creator and giver and preserver of all. The same spirit inspires their actions after the tables have been removed. For when the banquet is done, each demon takes by the hand the disciple under his guardianship, and all the rites are performed with the utmost absurdity in a frenzied ring, with hands joined, and back to back, and so they dance, throwing their heads like frantic folk, sometimes holding in their hands the candles which they have before used in worshipping the devil. They sing in honor of the devil the most obscene songs to the sound of discordant pipe and tabor, played by one who sits in the fork of a tree. And in the foulest manner they commune with their demon lovers. They come to these sabbats, as we have said, in the silence of midnight, when the powers of darkness are strong. From what we have already described, therefore, and from the confession of witches themselves before their judges, it is clearer than light, and will be confirmed by particular instances, that witches are carried bodily through the air to the sabbat by demons, and not only are they themselves so carried, but with the help of the devil, they can carry others on their own shoulders. He then goes on to give a number of examples from trials which have occurred. So that's what happens on Walpurgis Night, which is going to happen in just a few days from the publishing of this mini-sode. So take some precautions, light a bonfire, invite your friends over, put on a little masquerade dance, and it's necessary. It's necessary to have a party to protect yourself from the witches and from whatever else is out prowling on Walpurgis Nacht. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.